Maybe.
Ethan.
Kat.
We're going to spend a little bit of time today answering a question that we've gotten multiple times, which is how to trim your dog's nails properly.
And we want to explain why it's important to be able to trim your dog's nails yourself. First of all, vet visits and things like that can get expensive, as well as it makes your dog more tolerant if you are working on trimming their nails for them. We got a little puppy here. Whip.
Thanks to our friends at Hawkhaven's Kennel. We just picked her up a few weeks ago.
And then we'll also be doing shooter's nails to show you an adult dog's nails being trimmed.
Now, a couple things that we get are, first of all, I hate trimming my dog's nails because they're black. I can't see the quicks. Quick is a big thing that everybody has learned and is that is not something you want to quick. So to explain the dog's nails a little bit, first of all, we can show on Rip here. We haven't trimmed hers for a few days so that we can show how a puppy's nails are getting a little too long. But the quick would be like the meaty part of your fingernail. We want to make sure and not cut that, but we need to get the nails as short as possible. Now, with a puppy's nails, it's not going to be quite as important as the adults, so we'll show you this. But to start off with, any puppy that we're going to trim their nails, you need a good pair of nail clippers. Now,
I'm going to try and flip this real quick so that I can see what I'm doing. There we go.
Okay, so what we like to try and do is get a smaller pair of nail clippers. They're either going to be like cat or specifically for puppies, and we use these smaller nail clippers for both the puppies and the adult dogs. They seem to give us a little more control and allow for less accidents with cutting too much or anything else. Now, when you have a puppy, we just actually woke her up from a nap. She's pretty relaxed here, but take some time, help your puppy relax and be comfortable laying on your lap. This is going to give us a really easy view at how long the nails are, where they're at, where they need to be trimmed. Then we're going to take our nail clippers here, and Kat's going to get in a little closer.
Here.
We kind of want to scrape underneath, and it's going to, tell me if you can see that. All right.
Yep.
Okay, so you can kind of see where your clippers will catch every time at the same spot when you scrape underneath. So I'm just using the side of the nail clipper to scrape the bottom side of her nail. That's going to help to trim away any extra growth along the sides, and then give us the natural, it'll naturally cut in just at the very end of where the quick is, or the very start of the quick, depending on how you're looking at it. Now, we're going to make sure that our nail clippers are not angled too far this way or too far back, because you could still quick. You want it to be relatively straight across. Clip the nail.
We're basically cutting perpendicular to the nail.
Exactly. Good words. Now, it's okay if you quick them just a tiny bit. The closer you get to that quick, the shorter it's going to help keep the nails. The shorter the nails, and the more often you trim, the less likely the quick is going to be. Oof, you okay?
He says I sneezed. Shooter.
We want to make sure that the nails don't end up growing out. We see this quite a bit with adult dogs that haven't had proper nail trimming care. The quick will actually grow out if you don't trim their nails often enough, and then you have a problem because you can't keep them short. So again, we're going to scrape underneath her nail here. That's going to give us a natural catch spot. It catches every time at the same spot. Take your time. If your puppy starts to struggle a little bit, settle them down. And then clip each nail. You don't want this to be a struggle or a battle. If they're fighting and screaming and pulling away from you, just hold her here until she settles down. Good.
That is going to be one of the most important parts of trimming your puppy's nails, is to calm them down, help them get over freaking out about getting their nails trimmed. That way, as your puppy gets bigger and is harder to handle and hold on to, it's not a battle. So the more often you can trim your puppy's nails, even just going through this process, the more tolerant that they're going to become of this process. And another thing to keep in mind too is not to do this when you're in a hurry. If you've got to leave in 10 minutes to go to work or to go out to dinner or do something like that, that's not the time to try and trim your puppy or your dog's nails, especially if they're not as tolerant and easygoing about it, or it's the first few times you're doing it. They need to be calm and patient the entire time. And if you are feeling rushed for time, they're going to feed off of that energy, and then they're going to struggle more, and it's going to turn into a battle, and you're going to lose patience and give up on it.
Exactly. The most important part is, like Kat's saying, you want to take your time, especially in the beginning. And when you teach, like Rip's had her nails trimmed quite a few times, and she's learned this is an okay thing to have done.
She's like got her eyes shut sleeping. Aww.
So I want to show if you can get in really close.
Try. It's got to be able to focus.
Okay, right here.
Yep, you can see that little white dot in the center of the nail.
That's going to be her quick. And then everything else around it is...
I don't know if I can get closer. I'm going to try to and see if it focuses. Yeah,
yep, so
there we go.
The little white dot in the middle, that is the quick. Everything else around it can be trimmed. Now, with puppies, we just do a quick little perpendicular cut like Kat was saying. Just cut them off. Now, if you have a grinder, you can use a little grinder to shape them a little bit. But for the most part with our dogs, we just trim them, clip, 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 to keep them short.
With puppy nails, let me see if I can get this to refocus. There we go. With puppy nails, it's not quite as important to do the shaping because they're such a small nail. Now, with a bigger dog's nails, if you just do that one blunt perpendicular cut at the end of their nail, they're going to have some sharper corners and edges, and that's where either shaping them with the nail trimmer or with a grinder is really nice.
Okay. Now, I just clipped this side here. No. So she said I got a little too close for her comfort, and I didn't quick her, but it was uncomfortable. And in that situation, we just want to stop for a second and allow her to settle back down. Good. Now, if you accidentally quick them, it's going to probably happen. They will scream, or they will cry, or they will whimper. Something will happen depending on how how your dog's going to react. But the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that we need to not freak out ourselves. Just hold them, and then we need to stop the bleeding. It can take a while, so don't overreact. Just hold pressure on it. If you can, I'm trying to think where they would sell like a styptic powder or a
I know you can get that online, and I can share a link to that, as well as we had a couple questions about brands of the nail clippers we use. This doesn't have a brand on it. I was looking.
Are they Fisker brand? These ones specifically?
Those ones might be, but I can put a link to a couple of the other types that we use, and we'll throw that up at the end. Yep.
So the back nails are going to grow a little different. If you want to come in here closer, we'll show. The back nails, you can scrape them just the same, but they don't grow as long, and there's a much greater chance because dogs a lot of times will wear their front nails down by digging a little bit, and that kind of helps wear their quicks back. On the back nails, they don't do as much. So if you look, if I start to scrape here, we're just going to take off just barely the tip. That's all that we can take off there. So another good tip when you're cutting nails, these guards mean nothing. You can't just put it in and cut it off at
whatever that length is.
Yeah, it's just like our own nails. They grow at a little bit different rate. You don't cut the exact same amount off of your nails every time. So that nail, we cut just a tiny bit off. This nail here, we can actually cut more off. This nail here is going to be just a tiny bit. She said that was close.
And we're going to settle her back down again. Good. Get her comfy.
Taking our time, making sure she's relaxed. And then this last one here, again, we're going to scrape a little bit and then cut just that little bit off of there. The back nails we cut way less off of than the front nails. But all of our little nails are trimmed. And we have a happy, content little puppy. You can help keep her here for a little bit longer. Love on her. Make sure she's relaxed before we let her up. And then give her a little reward if you want, like a treat or something for doing a good job. Ultimately, we want them to understand it's okay to get your nails trimmed. It's a good thing. It's a comfortable time to relax and get some love and attention, and um, that we need to do it pretty regular. I would say on average, our dogs need them anywhere between one every week to 2 weeks. Um, some dogs wear them better than others. Our male Nix, he does a really good job of wearing his nails. He doesn't need his front trimmed almost ever, but we do trim them about every 2 3 weeks, maybe just a little bit. Now, Shooter, he needs his trimmed a little more often. It just kind of depends on how they wear their nails.
And every dog is different because of the type of materials that they're on. So if your dog spends some time in an outdoor kennel on a concrete pad, they might wear them a little bit more than if they're only in the grass in the backyard and in the carpeted house. They might not wear as much. And they might wear differently during different times of the year. I mean, when you're out hunting and the dog's on their feet and running a lot, they might wear them a little bit more than during the off season. So
I'm going to switch Rip here. I'm put it back in the crate, and then we'll do Shooter.
we'll do shooters. And sorry about the videography. Live videos are a little more difficult to live video, to switch directions and zoom in and zoom out, but
All right, Shooter, come here, buddy. Shooter. Here. Come on. So we're going to do the same thing with the adult dogs. Come on, right here.
because I don't want to.
Oh, no. So we'll roll them onto their back. Oh, good boy. Slide them up in here tight. So now, Shooter's nails are completely black, and this is the #1 thing that we get. How do I see the quicks? Because my dog's nails are all black, and I'm always afraid that I'm going to cut too much and everything else. Now, Shooter's nails are a little bit longer than what they need to be, so this will be a really good example. As well as, he doesn't wear, his outside of his nails grow just a little bit different than the inside. So this will be a prime example of how you should not cut each nail exactly the same. Now, again, Shooter's been doing this for quite some time. He's pretty comfortable with the chilling out here on his back. And like Kat mentioned before, don't rush this. Take your time. It's good for them to get a little love and attention. And
It's actually funny. We've got some of our dogs that just love this process where they get, like Tyler mentioned, a little mani-pedi time, and they really like it. They love just being messed with and held on their backs and played with their feet, and they just fall asleep in your lap. So this could be an enjoyable process. It doesn't have to be a battle and a struggle and a fight. It can be therapeutic for them even. Sneezers.
to throw a little bit off subject, this is a really good time to check your dog over too. Checking between their toes. All of our hunting dogs run through the grass and grass-ons and different thorns and sticks and different. They can all puncture or work in between the dog's toes, and that's something that we don't always see. It hides pretty well, and so checking between their toes, looking at their belly, making sure there's no cuts or little scratches. Something that we struggle with quite a bit with our hunting dogs is grass-ons. That would be the seed casing that has a little barb. It's designed to help carry seeds to different places, to spread the seed of weeds and grasses, and those are really good for dogs, where they'll get one that'll work into their side or into their toes, and they can migrate a really long way. So those things usually stay pretty hidden, and we can see a lot of those things in the places we may not necessarily look at as much. But let's start with Shooter's nails here. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to take these clippers and we're going to scrape underneath. Now these nails are a lot bigger than the puppy nails, so scraping can take a little bit more here, but you just tell me how much you can see here.
You just got to go a little bit slower so it gets a chance to focus. It's
Okay.
not focusing. Hold on.
Okay, so underneath his nail, we can see this more meaty part right here. That is part of the quick. Is it focusing?
Kind of. I was wondering if we turn the little bit of light on or something. You can see it.
Okay.
There we go.
So underneath here is the meaty part. On the dogs with the black nails, you can always see where their quick kind of comes out to, and that's underneath here. You can scrape this. It'll get dry and hard, and you can scrape it a little bit. That'll help to expose it for when the dogs are running. We want to have as much quick exposed as possible. That'll help them to keep them worn and stay short. Now, once we trim Shooters, I'll show you how short his nail actually is. But we're going to scrape here, and you're going to hit a natural catch spot, which is right here. This scraping, we hit the same spot every time where the trimmers catch. And that is right at the end of where you can see this meaty part underneath. So they're going to catch here. We're going to trim them off. Now, with the adult dogs, because there's so much more nail here, we're actually going to shape a little bit. We're going to cut the corner off of each side. And it can take a couple cuts at this, and then we're going to cut the top part off of that. That's going to allow it to kind of round the outside of the nail, exposing all of this right here. It'd be the quick. Now, we didn't cut it close enough to make it bleed or anything else, but this, having that meaty part there exposed, will allow him to start to wear that, or help allow him to continue to wear that and keep it nice and short. So, let's see, we can make this is where the small clippers become very, very handy. You can make very little trims and all the way around the outside, exposing. Can you see that on there pretty well? Okay, so exposing this quick. This is,
see if I can get a side angle so you can actually see. There we go.
Yep, and this is softer. You'll feel it if you poke it with your fingernail or with the clippers. It's soft. This is, that's the part you don't want to cut any more off of. Good sneeze. You don't want to cut any more off of that or it will start to bleed. So we're going to do the next nail now. We didn't trim a whole lot off of that nail. This nail is going to get a fair amount more trimmed off of just because of how he wears them.
I'm trying to see it. It's like...
Okay.
Okay.
So scraping underneath, enough. Stop. Scraping underneath. And we hit a catch spot again, which is right there. It just naturally will catch. You scrape that and it'll just naturally catch there. When we get to that point, we can just cut basically straight across again, perpendicular to the rest of the nail. And when we get that cut off, we're going to go for the corners. And then we're going to cut the top again. Now, if you look at it and you think, well, I could have cut that a little shorter, I didn't get it quite enough. If you can't see that softer part, which is, again, right there in the middle, it's all exposed, then you can trim it a little shorter, just doing it small amounts at a time, trying not to actually cut that quick and make him bleed. So we shaped all the way around the outside, which exposed the quick well.
And you can definitely use a Dremel to do this as well, to do the shaping.
So that one I didn't cut quite enough on the first time, so I cut another thin little slice off of there. We'll get the corners. And then the top again. So again, there's our meaty quick. Not focusing.
Yeah, it's got a second. There we go.
Okay, meaty quick right in the middle there. So now you can see on his nail itself, the trimmed up nail is actually very, very short, and that's because we stay on top of them. They get trimmed every couple weeks, keeping them short. This is going to help prevent a lot of issues. When you're hunting, they can be on rocks and different things else. If their nails get too long, they can break them off, and it's a pretty serious injury. Their foot, they'll break them off, clear the entire nail. They'll break off, or they'll just snap it in half, and it's very, very painful. A lot of dogs won't want to put any pressure on their foot at all. Some dogs will hunt through it, but either way, it's very painful for the dog. So keeping them trim is important to help keep our dogs hunting.
As well as if they break a nail that severely and they're always on their feet in the dirt and stuff, chances of infection are pretty high. So going to the vet and making sure that you get on some kind of medicine is important, but preventative medicine is sometimes the best medicine.
So even their adult dogs can be a little squirrely sometimes. He says, just hurry up and do this. It won't take you this long, Dad. So trimming, cutting corners, and then cutting the top. So we've shaped it around a little bit. We have the quick right there in the middle again. We'll go to this foot, and then we'll show you what the back looks like. It's a little different. Good job. Okay, let's look at the back ones now. Again, we're looking at the same situation as the puppies. With Shooter here, we have a lot less growth on the back than we did on the front. You can scrape, you will hit a natural catch spot, which is going to be, you can almost see where they start to curl a little bit. And we want to just trim that off. And then we can shape the back of his nails a little bit. So we're going to do the same thing here, scraping a little bit underneath. And then trim that off, and then shape them. But drastically less gets cut off the back, typically. Now, sometimes your dogs can get nail growth along the sides when you do your trimming. You actually see a big flake that you can peel them off, and that's going to expose more of the quick. So I just use my...
I'm just going to see if I could...
Stop, buddy. Just use my fingernail here to peel that outside off, and it kind of flakes off there, which will expose more of his quick and help keep them worn down. Can't do it on all of them, but sometimes there'll be a little bit that'll flake off that way. That undergrowth of the nail is what will help prevent or protect the quick and allow it to grow nice and long, which is not ideal. So,
and keep in mind too, when trimming nails, if your dog's nails haven't been trimmed in a while, their quick is going to have grown out quite a ways, and you're not going to be able to take off as much, and they're still going to look long right when you finish trimming them. So you want to just continue to trim them more frequently in order to get them the quicks to recede a little bit and to be able to trim the nails shorter and then keep on them and keep them short.
Now you can see on this one, it's flaking off on its own here. That's coming off the side, and we can just go ahead and grab the rest of that and break that off. Now he's kind of got a little dagger growing here.
Just a weird way that nail wants to wear.
And there's our scraping the bottom. We have our natural catch spot. Right there, cut it off. We go a little bit shorter, cut the corners, and then the top. We're looking again for, is that meaty spot exposed in front? Yes, it is. Is he bleeding? No, we did it right. We can flake a little bit extra off the sides here. Good boy, Shooter. And we'll finish him up really quick. He's got the same thing going on this side, where we can again flake those off. So let's say you haven't been keeping up on your nail trimming. Stay put. Dog's nails are very, very, very long. What you're going to want to do is trim them like we have here. And you're going to want to get one of the Dremel tools. It's made by Dremel. It's a...
You're really close. Sorry. Hello.
Here we are. It's actually made by Dremel, and it's designed for grinding nails now. But then we would get to... Stop. We would get to where we're at now, where we have the quick exposed, and we're going to naturally grind, or we're going to...
help accelerate the wearing process.
Yeah, so naturally digging and running and working is going to help wear this down. we're going to artificially do that with a grinder, and we'll take and grind off the outside and grind up the top, and we're going to actually grind on that quick a little bit. It'll be slightly uncomfortable for the dog, and you may grind enough to where it starts to bleed just a little bit, and that's going to have exposed or to ground down that quick a little bit more, and going to help to shorten their nails over time. If you have a dog whose nails are very, very long like that, you're going to want to stay very consistent with a weekly nail trimming. Every week, you trim them, you grind them, and then repeat. That'll help to work back that quick. The more you expose the quick, the more it's going to continue to recede. So
I'm going to flip us back around, and then we're going to make sure that we've answered some of these questions that were popping up.
all right.
Okay.
I'll let Shooter go here. Good boy.
So the first question I saw was the brand of clippers, which we'll go on and post a link to some of the types of clippers that we've used that seem to work really well. Honestly, I get a lot of them at like Shopko and Walmart, just cheap ones, because we'll go through them after a while and then we'll just throw them away, because once they start to get dull and not as sharp, then
Yes. You have to keep the nail trimmers very sharp. They're not very expensive, so get a pair.
And
If it seems
replace
like
them.
it's dull, just get another pair. We've got. Oh, thanks, Michael. Let's see. Peanut butter on a Kong toy. Perfect.
so we don't usually use a file. We either use the clippers to help shape the nail, or we will use the Dremel to help file it and grind it down a little bit.
Let's see. Trying to read the comments off of there. I'm gonna just pull it up on my phone quick, and it'll be a little easier to see.
I think that was pretty much the last question. We had a couple other comments, and then we're going to post the links to the nail clippers that we use and to like the quick stop or styptic powder, which if you do accidentally, quick your puppy or your dog a little bit and it won't quit bleeding with putting a little bit of pressure on, then you can use some of that styptic powder or the quick stop that'll help clot and stop the bleeding.
You'd really have to cut a lot for it to not stop bleeding. So don't worry about that. It will take some time depending on how much you cut. But like anything that's bleeding, applying pressure, a cold, wet rag will help, or a little bit of ice too if you don't have the styptic powder. But having a clotting type of powder would be really good. So,
especially if you're a little nervous about it, that having that styptic powder on hand should hopefully make you a little less nervous, more confident. And remember, just take your time, be patient with your dog, but don't pin them there and be like, okay, we're going to get this over with real quick, because they're not going to learn anything, and it's always going to just progress and become more of a battle and more of a battle. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you and your husband aren't even going to be able to hold them down long enough to get their nails trimmed, and they're just going to fight and struggle. And that's when you're in a hurry or you're fighting them, and that's when you're probably going to quick them more than if you're just going slow, taking your time and being calm and collected.
absolutely. So have fun.
Go
Keep
do those mani-pedis for your puppy.
Absolutely. And if you have questions, as always, don't hesitate to ask.
Thanks, guys, for watching.